Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of Prospect Corner here at the Hockey Writers. I'm your host, Matthew Zator, and as always, joined in by prospect expert here at the Hockey Writers, Peter Baracchini. Peter, how's it going? We're right in the middle of the World Juniors. We're going into the quarterfinals. This is perfect timing because it's happening as you guys will be watching this later today or whenever you're watching. It could be going on. But how's it going?
Going, yeah. Basically, the halfway recap of this tournament right now. It's been busy with the holidays, Christmas, New Year's, just is literally just bypassing us right now. So we're going to be a day into 2025 already. So, yeah, hectic couple of weeks, but been very enjoyable with the World Juniors right now.
For sure. Yeah, we're into 2025 now. I said 2024 seems to have just flown by. I mean, it seems like we were just doing this for the 2024 World Juniors. And yeah, it's been unfortunately it's a bit of a repeat for Team Canada as we'll talk about. Well, let's just jump right in and talk about the quarterfinals and we'll start with the relegation game because that'll be the first one kind of going on. Germany and Kazakhstan. Of course, these were two teams that not a lot of people expected a lot from. Germany had a pretty good tournament, though. I mean, they were pretty competitive. I gave Canada a run for their money. It was 1-0 right until the end there.
Mhm.
I they played pretty solid game. That could have gone either way if they could have got a goal by Carter George there. So we'll start with Germany there. What do you think about their tournament? Obviously, they're in the relegation games, so they could be kicked out. But Kazakhstan, I mean, they've also had a bit of a hard time too. They did score a few
Mhm.
goals throughout the tournament, but no one expected them to do anything. What do you think about both teams in the relegation game?
What would I want to describe both of them is just resilient. I mean, even in the first game, Germany held USA. They were down 2-1 for the longest time until, the onslaught from Team USA piled on and everything like that, because we know how good the Americans are.
Mhm.
But they held their own for a good portion or a good half of that game before it got away from them. And they took advantage of Trey Augustine and his glove hand weaknesses, exposed some of that because he did not look good in that first game. And obviously he was able to bounce back, but Germany looked to have found like a really, really noticeable weak spot or holes in his game, and they exploited it very, very well. And they took advantage of their opportunities and they got four by him, which is really impressive. Yeah, they lost 10-4, but to get four goals on the Americans when you're kind of lower in the standings, that's impressive. And same thing for Kazakhstan, too. I mean, I guess you could say that their biggest game was against Slovakia, and them
Mhm.
pushing them to overtime was very, very impressive. Again, you probably would have expected Slovakia to win in regulation, but they held their own. They pushed hard, they battled hard, and they managed to find a way to get a point out of it. Now, obviously, one team has to get relegated. This really sucks
Mhm.
in terms of that because one gets bumped down and then someone else is going to get bumped up next year. But both teams have been very, very resilient. They battled hard. They made their case to stay there or prove that they could still be in this top group. Germany, with the past experience that they've had, I know that this year's roster is kind of a little bit of a weakness or a little bit weak in terms of who they have in terms of players, but. I really liked David Lewandowski. I thought he's looked good so far. Um, One of those big names for the upcoming draft, and I believe there's also one
Mhm.
Hansel on defense. I'm just going to double check the name because it's drawing a blank right here. Carlos Handel. So yeah, it is
Yes.
Handel who is draft eligible as well, playing in the QMJHL this year. Um, for the Halifax Mooseheads doesn't have a point, but you saw some glimpses of his game of what he's able to do as that kind of two-way puck moving defenseman that he could bring. But I really liked his game. I like Devin Lewandowski's power and shot that he has. So, good on Germany for getting this far to this point. Again, they probably would have liked to have moved on to the quarterfinals, but if they could somehow stave off relegation and stay in the main group, I think that's going to be a huge win for them.
For sure. I think it could go either way. I mean, Kazakhstan has had a pretty good tournament too. But what's your prediction for the relegation? Who's getting relegated?
Unfortunately, I think Kazakhstan is going to get relegated. I think that despite Germany having I mean, I guess you could throw experience out the window at this point because they're two different rosters. Obviously, there's massive turnover for Germany, but again, both are resilient groups. Both had that opportunity to stay in within the top group and push the other one out. And either way, both teams have had some surprises in this tournament. So either or at this point, it's going to be a real big toss up. But I think you have to give the edge to Germany at this point.
Yeah, I agree. I think Germany's probably going to walk away with that. Who knows what the score will be? It could be a tight game. Both teams have looked pretty good in, at the same level of competition, and even against really good teams,
Mhm.
they've held their own, like you said. So could go either way. We'll see what happens there. All right, well, let's move into the quarterfinal matchups, and we'll start with Sweden versus Latvia. Sweden's had a pretty strong tournament. They, of course, won their group, right? So they're at the top. You got Latvia, who, of course, everyone knows beat Canada in the shootout, which was very surprising. And they've stood strong against really good teams and had two wins for the first time in these World Juniors. So a pretty big accomplishment for, I mean, even if they don't get by this quarterfinals, that's pretty good tournament for them. What do you think about Sweden and Latvia and their tournament so far?
Yeah, first and foremost, huge credit to Latvia. I know everyone is going to say that that was a massive upset against Canada, and it was, but you want to see that competition. You want to see parity at this level. And for the last few years, Latvia has been giving everybody a little bit of fits every now and then throughout the whole entire tournament. So they made it this far. I believe they made the quarterfinals again or they made the quarterfinals last year as well. So this is a team that's a hockey nation. There should be more attention on them. They
Mhm.
grind it out. They're very tenacious. They're very physical. They can wear you down, and they take advantage of all those opportunities, as we saw with Eric Smatejko and his goals so far against Canada and throughout the tournament as well. But yeah, I think that this is going to be this is their biggest test because we've seen how dominant Sweden has been. I think it's going to be matching that of Team USA, where maybe they're going to be very outmatched. And I think Sweden may be a little bit too much to handle for them because of who they're facing on the other side too. But you got to give credit to Latvia, and you hope that they can continue to have the success and go further along in future tournaments. But yeah, that's how I'm take my takeaways for Latvia, and as for Sweden too. I mean, I believe they have five or six main scorers in the top 15 of this tournament, with Axel Sandin-Pellikka leading the way with 8 points. Anton Wahlberg, David Granbergs, Otto Stenberg, Felix Unger Sorum, who's been a very big surprise for them right now. They're just very deep from top to bottom, and even in net. Um, maybe Thielen doesn't have the numbers, but he's managed to shut the door down very, very well with 3 wins, 890 save percentage, 260 or 3 goals against average. But I mean, aside from that, the defense, the forwards, Sweden is looking like one of those teams to beat. And obviously, I would say that if that was the case for Canada, but it's not looking like that right now. So it looks like Sweden is definitely going to be one of those teams that could push for a gold medal. And who knows? They probably got revenge on their mind. If there's another USA Sweden matchup, you could definitely rest assured that they would like some revenge after what happened last year on their home soil. So they're looking out for revenge, and yeah, they're on a mission. Everybody's playing really, really well. They're very deep, and it's just one of those instances where that's why they're a powerhouse. And I think they're going to be a little bit too much for Latvia to handle at this point.
I agree. I mean, they're second in the tournament in scoring, one behind, one behind Slovakia. So I mean, or no, Czechia. I, you know, they're scoring, and the thing is, I said that their defense was going to be their strong suit going to this tournament. It has been, and
Mhm.
the two guys leading the way, of course, is Axel Sandin-Pellikka and Tom Willander.
Yeah.
Willander had a heck of a game. I had the two goals in that one game there. So I expected that their defense was going to be really strong offensively, and those two guys, they're leading the way there. You said a lot of the forwards, Felix Unger Sorum, like you said, has been really impressive. That's because he's had pro experience. He's played in the AHL. So I mean, probably expected that he would be one of the better forwards, and they got a lot of depth. So I think they're going to end up going over Latvia, but Latvia is proven that they can hang with the big guys too. So I think Sweden's got to be careful. You never know what could happen in these tournaments. So they've got to just keep going on what they've been doing already and not take them for granted. I'm sure they're not after what they did to Canada too. So, all right, what's your prediction there? Are you going Sweden to come out of this one?
Yeah, it's hard not to take the Swedes. Again, who knows? Latvia could put up a really good fight and it could be a closer game than expected. But Sweden is just a more complete team right now, top to bottom. You got to give them the edge. Whether it's going to be a close game or not, they're going to come out on top.
Yeah, I'm predicting a close game. I don't think there's gonna be a blowout. A lot of these quarterfinal matchups aren't usually. I
Mhm.
mean, it's happened in the past with these less, weaker teams. They do get blown out, but I don't see that with Latvia and Switzerland. They're both teams that seem to be able to put together pretty good defensive effort. So I think it's gonna be a close game, but yeah, I think Sweden's coming out of it. They just have too much depth and talent to not. So I think that's what's going to happen there. All right, moving to US and Switzerland. The US, of course, they didn't go undefeated. They did lose in overtime against Finland, but they have been really strong throughout the tournament, and of course beat Canada in the final game of the round robin, and looked really good doing it. So I mean, what do you think about the US? And of course, Switzerland is here too, playing that really solid defensive game that seems to be a staple of their teams. Don't score a lot, but are still in games and can still get to quarterfinals. So, what do you think about this one?
Yeah, I think that this matchup, you don't want to take your opponent lightly, but I think this may be a bit of a blowout. I think maybe USA could definitely put up a five against Switzerland. I get that Switzerland is a little bit more competitive right now, but again, like we saw with that game against Canada and basically throughout the whole entire tournament from Team USA, when they're firing on all cylinders, when they turn on the jets, they're just absolutely tough to contain. I mean, they got that two-way presence. They got those quick rush chance abilities that could throw anybody off. And that's what makes them so deep. That's what makes them so dangerous every single time. And when you have the Boston College line, when you have depth behind them like Danny Nelson, Brody Zemer, Kerry Terrance, I mean, the list goes on and on. This is a really, really talented roster where you can't you expect the best out of them, and I think Switzerland is definitely going to get the best, and they're going to have their hands full a lot this time, just like Latvia is going to have their hands full with Sweden, but I think US is just going to be a little bit too much for them to handle up front. And when you have Cole Hudson leading the way, same as Z Boyum on the back end offensively, when they're able to lead the rush and push the play forward and as effortless and consistent as they have been, it's definitely something that's Switzerland needs to watch out for because we saw how much or how difficult it could be to handle Hudson and Boyum when they get in on the attack. So I really think that Team USA is definitely going to make this a bit of a blowout. I think they're going to put up at least 5 goals against Switzerland. And I think this is one of those things where, this is probably one of the teams to beat in this tournament, and they're going to make their presence felt.
Yeah, the US has been really impressive throughout. I mean, yes, like I said, they do have that loss against Finland, but they have so much talent up front. Cole Hudson's been really impressive, following in his brother's footsteps, coming in and being really good on the blue line. And of course, like you said, Buyam has been good too. Cole Eiserman has already showcased that shot that he's got against Canada. There was taunting the bench too. I mean,
Hmm.
he's right in there. So I mean, it team's very, very impressive. I think they're going to end up coming out of this one, and it could be a blowout. I don't see it being double digits or anything like that, but
Yeah.
it will be. They'll score a few. They are third in the tournament in scoring with 22 goals. So yeah, they're gonna put up probably at least 4 or 5 goals against Switzerland. All right, moving on to Finland and Slovakia. Again, these two, I mean, they've had a pretty good tournament overall, even though Slovakia hasn't been able to score as much as they in the past because they've lost a lot of their players that they have had. They've been drafted and not playing for them anymore. And Finland always puts up a really good fight. They don't score a lot either. So this game will probably be really tight. Both only scoring, Slovakia's got 11 goals in the tournament, Finland only 10. So, what do you see from Finland and Slovakia, how their tournament has gone so far?
Yeah, I feel like this will be one of the closer games because of the fact that, I mean, on Finland, none of the players that they have are inside the top 30 in scoring. Not to say that that's a bad thing, but it's pretty spread out. You know, Jesse Kiskinen, he has 3 goals. Konstantinius has 3 assists, and then you look further down, you have Emil Pieniemi, Thomas Euronen, Kasper Halttunen. You go down and you see all those big name players that should probably be a little bit more productive, but it's very well balanced for the Finns. And you know how pesky and how energetic and physical that they can play and wear down the opponent. You can't expect anything less than their best every single time that they step on the ice. But I like the balance that they bring. Um, Oddly enough, they got shut out by Canada 4-0 in the first game, and then have managed to be resilient, just like some of the other teams at this tournament, and find a way to win, find a way to grind it out and get that extra goal. So that's important, especially when you go deeper into this tournament. And as for Slovakia, I mean, when you again, you mentioned the roster turnover too. When Dalibor Dvorsky didn't have the great start, but he has picked up his game right now. He's got 7 points in 4 games. That's absolutely impressive when, the Blues loaned him from the AHL over into this tournament. It would have been really, really disappointing if he wasn't there to get that one more opportunity to compete and represent his country. Maxim Sturbak has looked very, very good on the back end. I've been impressed with Luka Radivojevic as well, draft
Mhm.
eligible player that's up for this year's draft. Um, Again, he was very impressive as a 16-year-old in this tournament last year, another year older. Definitely a veteran, if you want to call him that, despite his age at this point, but still looking very impressive. Again, it just kind of feels like you don't know what version of Slovakia you're going to get. Are you going to get the one that's going to be competitive, or are you going to get the one where you expect a little bit more out of them, but you don't get, kind of like early on in this tournament? And I get that they kind of had like a bit of an easier group. I get that, the competition is still a little bit competitive when you're going up against Sweden, Czechia, and all them, but there were some moments where you kind of felt that I was a little bit uneasy with some of their games, but they managed to find a way to win. Perfect example is that Kazakhstan game where they probably should have won a regulation.
Mhm.
But I do think that this is going to be a closer game than expected. Um, Again, it's probably going to be an early exit for Slovakia unless they rely heavily on their two go-to players in Sturbak and in Dvorsky. If they're able to carry this team and find a way to get that extra point or extra goal here and there, I think that Finland is definitely going to be looking possibly at an upset, but I would still put, I'm not a betting person, but I would definitely try to pick Finland to go forward into this tournament because of the depth and how balanced they are throughout the whole entire lineup.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, you never count Finland out. They always seem to pull things out and get into at least the medals and have a chance at them. So I think, especially with Slovakia, they've had some impressive performances. Like Dalibor Dvorsky's been really good. He's in the top end of the scoring in the tournament. So and this is a guy that, of course, has had pro experience too. He's been in the AHL this season and has looked really good there. So. You expected him to be good for Slovakia, and he has been. And then Finland, they have a really balanced two-way, I mean, lineup. So I think they probably will squeak this out. I think again it'll be a very close game. Could go to overtime. I mean, Finland's been in overtime already this tournament, so we'll see how that goes. All right, the final one, and this is we're very invested here for Team Canada, and that a lot of discourse about this team, the World Juniors this year, going against Czechia, who's one of the top scoring teams in the tournament right now. They actually are the top scoring team with 25 goals, just one ahead of Sweden, like I mentioned before. So they're scoring a lot. Canada, on the other hand, is not. They only have 10 goals in this tournament for a team that we're actually always used to getting a ton of goals through the round robin. And that hasn't happened this season or this year. What do you think? We'll start with Canada. Well, we'll start with Czechia. We'll leave Canada after that. What do you think about Czechia's tournament? They have had a lot, like I say, a lot of goal scoring and from quite a few different players.
Absolutely impressive. I mean, when you look at their go-to players or basically their top scorers in Jakub Stansel, Wojciech Hradek, and Edward Shala, they're basically one, two, three on that team scoring right now. So you're relying heavily on their big guys, but you're also looking at their depth. You're looking at Peter Sikora, Adam Yeko. I really liked Miroslav Halenka and what he's able to provide in center, kind of like that middle part of the lineup and be a depth presence for them. Um, yeah, again, even on the back end, Adam Jurček, he's got a couple points. You look at Thomas Galvis, you look at even Jakob Fibiger too, who's got 5 points or 5 assists in this tournament as well, showing his presence as a mobile two-way shutdown defender. Um, Mainly because of the fact that, he's going to be relied upon as one of those top defenders for Czechia, sorry. Um, and I'm kind of surprised too that, as he fell as far as he did into the seventh round. I thought he could have been a decent third, fourth, or fifth round pickup, but he's looking very impressive as one of those top defenders for Czechia on the back end. And yeah, obviously you got to look in goal too. Or Michael Hrabal, 2-1, 926 save percentage, 236 goals against average. Really tough to get anything by him right now. So if I'm Canada, I'm going to be a little bit worried about the fact that this is kind of some of the players are on from last year's roster are on this year's team as well. It's another quarterfinal matchup. You lost with 5 seconds last year,
Mm.
and now to add on top of that, you're basically scrambling to find goals, and it's very disappointing. And I know that there's a lot of discourse about who Canada could have brought, but in hindsight, you don't know. You easily could have probably got a lot of bit more production out of guys like Beckett Seneca,
Mm.
Andrew Crystal, Riley Heidt. I think those three players, they would love to have them on their roster right now, given how they can be offensive producers, have great skill, and could put the puck in the back of the net. But in hindsight, you really don't know if you're going to get that same type of play from them at this tournament. It could be you could have the same roster over and over again. You could take some players out, put them back in, and you could get the same result that you're getting right now. It could definitely be different. They could have had a few more goals, but with Canada, you're getting a lot of shots, but you're whiffing on a lot of opportunities. You're sending shots wide. They're easy tap-ins or easy rebound situations where you crash the net and you're trying to locate the puck that you probably should bury and you're not. And that to me is a problem too. And you could probably look at the fact that they could have up and down their lineup. There are a lot of role players, which I get, but at the same time, these are all highly skilled, highly productive players within their respective leagues. I mean, I not to put the blame on a 17-year-old, but Gavin McKenna, he's been snake bitten a lot, hitting a lot of posts and everything like that. But I think he's been one of Canada's best forwards so far. Easton Cowan, he hasn't looked that great, unfortunately. Um, you're looking on him to be a reliable veteran player, but he's only got 3 points. I believe he's leading the team in scoring, and that's just not going to cut it at
No.
this point. Callum Ritchie, he's sent a lot of shots wide. He's attacking the net, but he's got to bury those opportunities. And you could say the same for a lot of players and a lot of forwards too. You need a little bit more out of Braden Yeager. You need a little bit more out of Bradley Nadeau, who did score against Team USA, but I would have loved to have seen a little bit more out of him throughout the tournament as well. Berkeley Catton too.
Mm.
I believe he's had the most shots on net and he hasn't found the back of the net once. And that to me is very, very surprising. So I don't know what to make of this forward group. I mean, you have a lot of good players on defense too that can play that shutdown two-way game. You're very mobile, but the forwards that you have are just not getting it done. And you've been scratching Rakoff, you've been scratching Martone. What are you going to do now? You need to find an answer. You need to find goals, and you need to find a way to get at least past the quarterfinal and at least push for a medal, because if it's another quarterfinal exit, there's going to be a lot of disappointments for Hockey Canada on who they could have brought or who they left off as opposed to who they brought on this tournament. And that's going to be the main talking point if they fail again this time around.
I think the thing is like you said, it's not like they brought a bunch of grinders that don't
Yeah.
score in their leagues that they're in.
They've brought their
Um,
top tier players.
yeah, I mean they're top line guys wherever they're playing, so it's not like you're bringing these third, fourth line guys. And a big thing I think is their discipline. I mean, you can't be killing
That too.
penalties. Like
Hmm.
most of the time, you're not going to score there. And against teams like the US, who scored on the power play, Czechia is going to be they're going to be dangerous on their power play if they get into penalty trouble in that game. You can't be doing it. I mean, and
Hmm.
that just puts your whole team behind the eight ball if you're taking penalties left, right, and center. So I
Hmm.
think that's a big problem for Canada throughout this tournament too. Yeah, the goal scoring and stuff, and the defensemen, the offensive defensemen they could have brought. They could have St. Perek, Carter Yakimchuk. But really, would that made much of a difference if you're always in the penalty box? I don't think so.
Probably not.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
No, that's a good point too, and that is the main thing. Aside from the lack of goal scoring, the discipline has been a reason why they've been losing games. There was a unnecessary penalty that led to the tying goal when they actually got the lead against Latvia. There was a too many men in overtime. There were reckless and, to be frankly, very dumb,
mm,
stick infractions, slashing, hookings, trips, you name it. And again, you go back to some of the like cross checks, Sawyer Minio in that one, Easton Cowan as well. They've had very, very bad penalties. And what really kind of disappoints me as well is Dave Cameron or post game against Team USA where they ask him about the penalties. If he's talked to them, he's just like, no, I mean, what more can I say? I'm
yeah,
like, you're the head coach. It's your job to instill into them that this is the international play. The rules are different. I mean, when you trip a guy when the stick is in between the skates, that's a trip no matter what. But even the slightest like touch on the hands anywhere, it's going to be called as a penalty. Anything that constitutes as kind of boarding, kind of a head contact, you need to be careful because international rules, they're going to call that. It's on the head coach to instill that
yeah.
you cannot do this every single time. And to me, I'm not sure if he lost the room or anything, but if he's already said that he's told them about the penalties and they're still taking really dumb and stupid penalties, then it's basically a lost cause. Because what
Yeah.
else? I mean, I don't want to call it a lost cause because if you're a coach, you're still trying to tell them multiple times. How many times do I have to say this? You cannot do that. And especially if you're going to do that against Czechia, where they do have a lot of dangerous weapons. And, it was a close game in that pre tournament when Canada played them, where Gavin McKenna scored 2 goals, including that late game winner, where, if you got to find a goal, you got to make your special teams count. You can't be on the penalty kill so much. You want those power play opportunities. And if you're able to get those, great, but you got to capitalize on that as well. So, yeah, just sheer disappointment all around for Canada at this point.
Their power play hasn't been very good either. So I mean
Yeah.
that doesn't help either too. So special teams. That I mean
Yeah.
that's something that's always you discuss. Doesn't matter if it's international play or the playoffs. It's you need to be good on
Mhm.
both, and unfortunately they've not been. They've got to have at least one good game where
Mhm.
where both those things work.
The one positive too to take from this is in past years, you're always looking to be or to see who is going to be that guy that you can rely on at net. And Carter George is definitely
He's been
that guy that
great.
they can rely on. He's been that guy that they can, if things get hectic, like there were times against Team USA, I know a lot of goals got by him, but not necessarily his fault. But he's made a couple of, big time saves that kept his team in there to make it at least a close game up until that third period. Um, he had back-to-back shutouts against Germany and Finland.
Yeah.
He's had good success for Canada internationally, even at the U18s. The fact that you had good goaltending this time and the offense goes cold when every year it's kind of been reversed,
Yeah.
that to me is kind of comical at this point because you actually have a goaltender that you could rely on. You have a lot of good skill up front, even if you're not blowing teams out of the water like 7, 8, 9, 10. But if you're winning like, 5, 6, 1 with the talent that you have, that should have been a good result. But you're
Mm.
not getting those goals at this point.
They sound like the Buffalo Sabres right now.
Yeah. So hate
Sorry,
hate
Sabres
to
fans.
I was about to say, you hate to do that, but
I mean, it's true right now. I mean, Sabres have great goaltending. Haven't been able to score
yeah.
though this season. So, yeah, we'll see how Canada does against Czechia. What is your prediction there? I mean, is Canada come out of the quarterfinals or?
The optimist in me says that they actually get it together and they take less than three penalties in a game. They get more power play opportunities where they're moving their feet and they aren't, I get that there are a lot of like after whistle curricular activities, but you got to stay away from that too. I know if there's something that you just can't step down from, okay, fine, but you got to learn to know when to back away. Um, I think Carter George is going to stand on his head, and if they have any saving grace, they're going to have to rely on him in order to win. Because if you can't rely on your offense, you got to help him out at this point, but at least try and get that one extra goal that could be the difference maker. Um, Optimist in me says Canada, but the way that Czechia has played too, it wouldn't surprise me if they move on and Canada gets another early exit. And this is kind of disappointing considering the talent that they have. But here we are,
Yeah.
a possibility of another early exit for Canada, and they got to go back to the drawing board. And if that's the case next year, you better take those players that are going to be difference makers with highly skilled creativity, goal scoring, playmaking to be that difference maker next year because they're just not getting that right now.
Yeah. Load up. I mean, just load up offensively.
Yeah.
It's like,
I mean, Sweden did. I mean, USA's doing that. Czechia's doing that. They're loading up with their best players.
yeah, do it. I mean, we'll see what happens there. All right, our official predictions now. We'll go with well, we went through who's going to be going on. So who do you have in the bronze medal game and then the gold medal game?
So here's the thing. At the start of the tournament, I had like a little mini prediction thing where I said Canada, USA, Finland as my top three. I don't feel confident in that anymore right now. So um I'm gonna say I think it's gonna be a bit of a repeat from last year. I think it's gonna be maybe Finland and Czechia in the bronze medal game and then USA Sweden in the final. That's where I kind of feel like it's heading right now at this point. I'm kind of getting that feel, but who knows what could happen? Who knows what could happen at this stage of the tournament? And maybe Canada does find a way to squeak out a win and they move on and they could probably push for a bronze medal because I think gold is a very distant
Yeah,
memory at this point. But if you're able to get the bronze medal, if you're Canada, I think that's kind of a win given how things have gone this tournament so far.
yeah.
But I'm gonna say right now, Finland, Czechia, maybe pencil in Canada, depending on what happens in that game.
I definitely have US Sweden in the gold medal game. They've been two of the strongest teams
Mhm.
in this tournament. I also, though, I would not put it past Czechia. They always
Yeah.
seem to do.
Hmm.
I don't know what it is about that team, but they seem to be able to do stuff. And the way they're scoring in this tournament, I can maybe see them outside possibility of them being in the gold medal game.
Yeah.
But the way that Sweden and the US are playing right now, I think they're the ones and I'm gonna go with Czechia as a bronze. Um, Sweden, US. I want Sweden to win a gold. They've been
Hmm.
just subscribed for that so long. So I'm gonna go with Sweden getting the gold medal over the US, but it's
Yeah.
gonna be a very tight game. So who do
I
you
for
got?
I was about to say I think that this will be Sweden's year because they're more not to say that they weren't complete last year, but I think that with the defense that they have that could shut things down and they could, get that mobility and that transitional game going into breakout game as well. Given how their forwards are strong on the attack, they could wear the opponent down. They're big, they're strong, they can match Team USA and they could find the back of the net just as well. And I think that this could be Sweden's year where they actually get out of this tournament with gold around their neck. Um, I don't put it past Team USA because if Trey Augustine has those kind of performances like he did against Team Canada, I think that's going to be huge. But there have been moments where he has been shaky, and that's where I'm a little bit wary of them still repeating as gold because I think that Sweden's depth and their ability to just constantly attack nonstop is going to be the difference maker, especially with Sandy Pellick on the back end, Tom Verlander, Theo Lindstein as well. They don't really have Team USA doesn't have that one extra puck mover where they do have Hudson, they do have Boyum, but I think that those three guys have been a little bit more productive compared to the Team USA's back end. Obviously, that Boston College line could probably be a difference maker, but with the forward depth that Sweden has too, I think that's going to be very important for them. So I would say Sweden gold, USA silver, and I'll go Czechia bronze.
All right. So we'll see how that all goes when we get together again and talk about what the results of this World Juniors is. So let's finish it off with our predictions for the awards at the end. So we won't do the all-star team and all that stuff, but we'll just do the big ones here. So top goaltender, top defenseman, top forward, and the MVP. So we'll start with the top goaltender. Who do you have?
I'd still probably give that to Carter George because despite Team Canada being snake bitten or not finding the offense, being undisciplined, Carter George, I believe he won both player of the games twice when he got those shutouts. So he's been absolutely fantastic for them. He's been the reason why Canada's even got to the quarterfinals at this point. I mean, Jack Ivankovic looked okay, some shaky moments himself as a 17-year-old. I probably wouldn't have played a 17-year-old goaltender in a big stage tournament like this just yet. I probably would have gone with Carson Bjarnason, but I do think that Carter George has the numbers and the skill to possibly still push Canada forward. And if they do make the semifinals, I think he should be in contention for that award because he's been absolutely lights out for Team Canada.
All right, Carter George. I'm gonna go with Michael Horabel. I think he's had a heck of a tournament so far, and depending on how they do in the medal rounds, I think he's going to be a reason that they'll get to wherever they go here. So I'm going to go him, and Carter George definitely is in that conversation too. All right, defenseman.
This
Tough one.
is
There's a lot. There's actually quite a few
See,
guys
it's a
that,
tough one, but I think it's an easy one. But it's going to come down to two players, and that's Axel Sandin Pellikka and Cole Hudson. Both are
yeah,
leading the tournament as defenders with 8 points each. Sandin Pellikka with two extra goals, Hudson with two extra assists. But and not to say that plus minus really matters, but they're both +7 for their respective teams. So in a small tournament, let's just make plus minus that important.
yeah.
I mean, both are very dynamic. I think you could go either way for either or, but I think depending on who wins gold, I think it'll come down to that. And because I picked Sweden to win gold, my pick is going to be Axel Sandin Pellikka for a top defender. But then again, we've seen the opposite happen.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to come down to one of those two players.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've both been phenomenal for both the teams, and I say it's really crazy when you see now we've got the Hudson brothers.
Mhm.
I had the Hughes brothers going before, and now we got the Hudsons here.
Just
So
wrecking havoc at this tournament.
yeah, I mean, like, well, we all know what Lane did,
Mhm.
like, and now just Cole just takes over. He's doing the same thing at Boston College, which is funny because they just kind of switch. They just had another Hudson. Yeah, so I'm gonna go between those two. I really like Axel Sandin Pelga. He's been off the chart, so I'm gonna go with him too, as the top defenseman. All right, forwards. There are quite a few guys that have been scoring a lot in this tournament too. Who do you have as the top forward?
Yeah, and there's no one forward that has separated themselves from the pack basically because you look at how many players have 7 points: Stancil, Dvorsky, and Hradek, Shala, Wahlberg, Granberg, Hagens, Iserman, Stenberg, Sorum all have 6. Got a couple players with 5. Again, it's still early on in the tournament, but I I think we're going to see one of James Hagen's and Cole Iserman pop off. They thrive in the big moments. I tough to. I mean, I've been actually Cole Iserman. I'm kind of surprised he only has 2 goals in this tournament. So his playmaking is
Yeah,
starting to increase a little bit. So he's not just going to be that one-dimensional player that we all thought that he would be. So he's starting to round out his game and be more of a lethal offensive player. But you know, James Hagen's on every single international stage seems to take our breath away with his offensive production, the skill that he possesses, and everything like that. So um, the fact that he's leading Team USA and scoring right now, I think he kind of has that edge, and I think he's going to be relied upon a little bit more in those big games, and especially against Switzerland too. I think that top line is going to go to work, and James Hagens is going to be a big part of that. So I would probably take James Hagens as my top forward uh, at the moment right now.
yeah. I mean, all of us were saying about. I'm not saying this is one tournament. This is not all of a sudden Higgins is like completely first overall pick and all that. Matthew Schaefer, of course, is hurt, so he hasn't
Yeah.
been able to do anything else. to increase his stock. But Hagens is definitely not hurting it. He's definitely looked really good in a tournament that's usually for older players. So definitely in that conversation for sure. I think Hagen's is probably gonna be in. But like I say, it all depends on what happens throughout the rest of the tournament
Yeah.
too. What some guys could do. It's going to be interesting to see. MVP is usually the one that gets picked because of what they do in the medal rounds. So, but who is your early one for MVP?
Again, probably going to be either Sandin Pellikka or Hudson. They're just that dynamic on the back end, and I think this may be that year where we may not see a forward again, depending on what happens in the medal round, but we may not see a forward possibly win MVP. And when you get those kind of dynamic offensive players from the back end, maybe Canada could use one. But
Yeah.
I mean, when you have your top defenders or your go-to top pairing offensive producers leading the way offensively, that to me is impressive, and you can't overlook that. So I think it's either going to come down to Sending Pellikka or even Cole Hudson for that.
Yeah, like I said, they've probably been, well, they're both in the high end of scoring in the tournament. Of course, that Axel Standing Pelka leads the way, and there's no forwards that are leading the way. So,
Mhm.
of course, those two guys are going to be in the conversation. They're generating a lot of the offense for their teams. So, yeah, it could probably be between those two guys. James Hagens could actually enter that conversation again, depending on what he does
Yeah.
for the rest of the way, too. So, we'll see what happens. Throughout the rest, because I think it's going to be exciting to see what these quarterfinals produce and the semifinals. Um, hopefully Canada can muster something up against Czechia, get their scoring going, and stay disciplined. Or it could be another early exit for them,
Mhm.
unfortunately. It, it just seems like such a memory when they were winning so much, five in a
Yeah.
row there. I just seems like the U.S. and Sweden and Czechia have kind of taken over that the last few years. Um, I mean, they did get a gold medal. It hasn't been that long since
Mhm.
they did. Connor Bedard leading them there, but yeah, it's disappointing to see what. Hopefully, they can turn it around in the medal rounds here.
For
All
sure.
right. Well, thanks, Peter, for joining and talking World Juniors and the quarterfinals coming up. Make sure to check out everything at thehockeywriters.com. We've got a whole team of writers covering the World Juniors as it goes on, recaps after every game. We got the takeaways from a lot of the teams too. So check out all that content going on at thehockeywriters.com. And we've got Daniel Amoya. I hopefully I'm pronouncing his last name right there. He is going to be there at World Juniors, coming up here, boots on the ground for the hockey writers there. So check out all his articles coming out after the tournament or during as well. So make sure to check out everything. But until our next episode, we will see you next time.